It's September 17th, 2024, and this is the full moon, lunar observance night, and 2 months of the Vasa period, the formal rains retreat period, has passed, 1 month to come, and the bhikkhus listened to a recitation of the Patimokkha, 227 precepts in Pali this afternoon. And then our novice did redetermined his precepts, and then the Anagarikas redetermined their precepts, and now the lay community has the opportunity to take the 3 refuges and the 8 precepts. And for anybody who might be new to this, it's just for a day and a night. It's not a long-term commitment, although some of you are making a long-term commitment to the precepts, which is wonderful. But then just follows the tradition from Thailand, where the lay community, especially in the Isan, in the northeast of Thailand, then their weekend is really determined by the lunar observance days. So the farming communities, the agrarian communities that still exist in the northeast of Thailand. So rather than taking Saturday and Sunday as their weekend, to be the lunar observance day and the day after the lunar observance day. And they would actually take the precepts along with the meal offering. There'd actually be a Dhamma talk given before the meal, and the meal is eaten a little bit later. And at a place like Wat Nong Bapong or at Wat Pananachat, then the lay community comes together and they determine to just keep those 8 precepts, the renunciate precepts, just for a day and a night, and they'll spend the day. Usually in the afternoon, people might take a rest, preparing themselves for the all-night meditation vigil, and then lay people will be seen doing sitting and walking meditation through the afternoon, later in the afternoon, having tea, and then there will be people, they'll come together for the puja, and there will be a Dhamma talk, and then the lay community along with the monastics will stay up through the night in Thailand. So it's really kind of amazing to think about that on this day. I mean, Thailand is, right now it's say 14 hours before us, so they'll be completing their all-night vigil now. That'd be actually 10 in the morning, so they will have long since completed it. But just that on these lunar observance days, there's so many people in so many monasteries taking the precepts and meditating, cultivating the wholesome, relinquishing the unwholesome. And there's so many people doing this in so many monasteries around Thailand and in America and in England and around the world now. And this is really something that, in my opinion, this is what really, truly brings benefit to the world, is when there's a lot of individuals keeping precepts, holding precepts, meditating, attempting to calm the mind, still the mind, train the mind. This is of great benefit. So those of us who have been meditating for a while, we may have had the experience of just feeling peaceful. We may have started to feel peaceful when we're meditating. And that will necessarily come from at least a temporary setting aside or relinquishing of sensuality. When the mind is overcome by a desire for sensuality, then it's not peaceful. And when the heart lets go of it, even temporarily, then it is peaceful. It's actually very simple. And yet, the habit or the drive for sensuality is so very powerful, and it isn't peaceful, and yet why is it so very powerful? And that's because it's the very thing that brought us into existence. These are the substrates of existence. This is samsara. This is the cycle of samsara. And this is what's keeping it going. So we were born into this world because of desire, sensuality, and this is what we're trying to relinquish, because we acknowledge that this is what is peaceful, this is what is sublime. The relinquishing of all acquisitions, and so on. And this is what the phrase that comes up over and over again in the suttas, the Buddha's teachings. Sometimes something I find helpful is coming into the hall and just actually, rather than necessarily focusing on the breath or trying to train the mind directly, is making use of the quiet environment that's around us. So I find like listening to the insects in the evening, the crickets, the wind, a barking dog in the distance, tapping into that stillness that surrounds us can be quite useful. And I remember so many times at these lunar observance days, and while living in Thailand, be it a branch monastery, or they'd have these all-night Dhamma talks on the katinas. So we haven't really done that here yet, but in Thailand, you'd have katina season after the Vasa period. And you might go around to different monasteries and participate in their katina ceremonies, and there would be Dhamma talks through the night, and then you might actually listen to all-night Dhamma talks and then have a rest for a day, and then the day after that, go to another katina ceremony, and there would be another set of all-night Dhamma talks. And sometimes going to these small branch monasteries, really remote in the Isan, and listening to these talks, and maybe listening to the talks till 11, midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then getting up and going for a walk, because you don't have to sit in the hall for all these talks. You can actually get up, and there might be coffee or cocoa or tea made available, so you can actually go out and take a break. And in these small monasteries in the remote parts of the Isan, you'd go outside at 2 in the morning and it'd just be so quiet. And you might hear the Dhamma speaker going on lightly in the background. And it's so peaceful. Or I remember, I think it was at Pudendang. Is that the first branch monastery of Wat Nong Pah Pong?
Not the first, but it's very early.
Very early, maybe the third or something. Yeah. Going there, and Luang Pa Liam and a lot of the other senior Wat Pah Pong Ajahns being there at a katina ceremony, and then say one of them may have given a talk, and then they'd be hanging out at a different area of the monastery, being served maybe some drinks, and just going there and sitting with them. And all these senior monks, they're just so peaceful, and they're not really talking or chatting very much, maybe just a little bit, but just abiding in peaceful abidings. These senior monks, they've been training their minds, their hearts for so long, and they can just be with each other quietly, and it's so enjoyable. No need to talk about anything. Oh, what a relief. Don't Don't have to talk about anything. No need to talk about anything. It kind of reminds me of a story of an old Native American tale of the elders sitting around quietly with each other in the sweat lodge, and the young warrior coming in and kind of talking and kind of, wow, this is great. Wow, what are you guys up to? Yeah. And then and everybody still, the elders would still abide fairly peacefully and maybe respond a little bit to him. But then when he left, one of them says, hey, he interrupted us. So that sense of silence, not wanting to interrupt the silence. And it's such an interesting kind of illusion too, when there's a lot of things going on, or there might be work in the monastery, and there's a lot of kind of, seemingly there's a lot of things happening, but actually there's nothing happening. It's all an illusion. Because when the mind is peaceful, then nothing's happening. Where was all the work? Where is all the work in the monastery? What's all that? What was all the fuss about? There's actually nothing happening. It's just the mind doing its thing. Or like the Buddha would say, consciousness being like a conjurer's trick. It's so compelling. Seems so real. But actually there's just silence behind it. It's just peace. So thinking like this can be very, very helpful. And when the heart becomes full with this, then you have a lot of energy, encouragement, inspiration. And we can feel encouraged. The heart can be buoyed up by this sense of peace or stillness. Luang Cha, in one of his teachings, he said that when you want to make the body strong, you lift weights, you do more activity, you do more bodily activity. If you want to make the mind strong, bring it to peace, bring it to stillness. That's what makes the mind strong. This takes time and training, and the habit of the mind is going to be to go into sensuality and to get stirred up by things. That's going to be the habit of the mind. And again, it's giving importance to all sorts of things on the outside. It seems like all these things are very important. It seems like there's a need to really get things done quickly. It's all an illusion. I even like to think about sometimes the Tibetan way of viewing phenomenon. Say the way a meditator should view phenomenon is just like a rainbow-like mirage, just like a play of light and colors. It's not to say that we don't attend to things or delight in a job well done. It's not to say that we don't do a good job when we're cleaning or working in the kitchen or doing any of the tasks around the monastery. This can also be very helpful to encourage ourselves, give ourselves a sense of inspiration. But when we do it with the peaceful mind, it's, one, is the quality's higher. Two, we actually get more done. Three, it's much more enjoyable. So when we do things around the monastery, we try to train ourselves to not do it in the way of the world, which would be just doing things either for money or just to get it out of the way so we can move on to the next thing. But the meditation masters in Thailand, they encourage us to, when we sweep, we do it as a Buddha puja, Dhamma puja. When we mop the floor or clean, we're doing it for the Buddha, for the Dhamma, for the Sangha. These things we actually take refuge in and have gratitude for. It's giving us these refuges of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, which have given us so much to work with and helped us to make the mind peaceful. And without these refuges, how could we bring the mind to peace? Without these teachings pointing the way for us, it'd just be so difficult, so much more difficult. Another teaching of Luang Por Chah is that he said, the practice is really difficult. Why is it difficult? It's difficult because of desire. But when desire fades, it's not difficult anymore. So it's very basic, this is all very primary. So why can't we do it? Why can't we let go of desire? Why can't we bring the mind to peace? And another thing that the meditation masters in the Thai forest tradition would focus on constantly, any of you who've read the Luang Por Jia biography will know that he put such great emphasis on the asubha kammatthana, the recollection of the unattractive nature of the body. Actually, taking the body apart, peeling the skin away, and so on. And this is something we don't talk about so often in public talks, but here on the Lunar Observance Day, it just seems worth mentioning it a bit, because we're all practitioners. We all want to bring the mind to peace. We all want to develop in Dhamma. So none of us here are going to talk like Luang Por Jia talked. I encourage you to read the biography. But the story, it's he would emphasize asubha kammatthana to the extent that, according to the stories, that sometimes lay people would be leaving the Dhamma hall in tears. And so we're not going to do. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. Tears of joy. That's okay. But it's counterintuitive that these recollections actually do lead to more peace and well-being, sustainable well-being, not just a brief hit of well-being or a brief hit of pleasure that we get from any type of sensual pleasure. Or the story of Tanajan Dan contemplating earth element and using the food, looking at the food, contemplating his food before eating it, and contemplating his earth element. And then one day actually taking the first bite of food and actually perceiving it as just sand and dirt. And then we would think that would not lead to joy necessarily, but in terms of the mind, the joy was so great in that moment that he just burst into tears of joy and had to leave the hall, couldn't even eat his meal that day. So these reflections, these contemplations, how could the Buddha have figured that out? That these recollections of just the body or food, just these basic things that we relate to and every day, recollecting their true nature leads to those states of joy and peace and well-being. Why couldn't we see that? And it seems the mind, the heart is just hardwired to not see those things, because samsara seems to be dependent on just not seeing those things. Just that something like a subha kammatthana can actually lead to the heart being peaceful, and when the heart is peaceful, there's that natural sense of wishing everybody well. So it can increase the metta, the well-wishing, the and compassion also. So I think won't go on for too long with these recollections, these reflections. Then just having a few reflections I feel is useful, because we can take what's been said. If anything that I've said has been useful and beneficial, then you can take that and use it for your practice. And I think I'll just leave it at that for this evening.